All right, we're gonna get started in just a second. Sorry, give me a bit. All right, let's go ahead and get in to this. All praises to the Most High, yeah. All right. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of mine heart be acceptable in Yahweh's sight. He is our strength and our Redeemer, and it is in His name, which is His authority, that we pray, praise, proclaim, project, and protect tonight's message. Aman. Shalom. Mashapachi. Peace, everybody. Hopefully, all is well. We thank you guys for being on. We're grateful to have you on with us one more again. And hopefully, all is well with everybody. Shalom, depending on where you are in the calendar. We are excited to be with you one more again and excited to spend some time with you. So, we're going to go ahead and get started. As a reminder, right after this, we are going to have our project management meeting. So if you would like to join us for that, just look on the Google Calendar invite. We'll see if we can send the text out to everybody, but the best place to get the information will be from online. So if you're able to do that, we're going to have a conversation where we talk about helping out the babies in Rwanda, amongst other things that we're doing. That'll be the main topic of discussion for tonight. And then we'll be back on track next Monday with our project management meetings being on Mondays at 9 p.m. New York time. Also, tomorrow evening, as a reminder, sisters, you're going to have the weekly meeting for Women in Red. It's starting to be every week. So if you can be ready for that, be ready to join. We appreciate you doing so in advance. That'll be 7 p.m. New York time on Friday. And then on Saturday, if you're able to join us, we will be doing, amongst the things we normally do, we have started our watch party for the original, wow, I'm trying to say 7 Year Slave. That's not correct. They redid it recently, but the original Birth of a Nation that was recorded or put out at least in 1915. That'll be at 12:15 p.m. New York time, and following that at 2 p.m. New York time, if you can join us, we'll be having an international service. We'll be using Kofi _43, and we'll make sure it's recorded as well, so you guys can make sure you catch up on all those things. That being said, since we have the meeting coming up at 9 p.m. New York time, let's jump right in. Todah, Maisha Pachi, Torah, Mishkapa. Thank you, family, and gracias, familia, for being on with us. We appreciate you. Once again, we give our honor and praise to the Most High. We give our praise and honor to Him for my wife, the Honorable Maya, who lives life to able to be honored. And to the ministerial staff, SOC, those who work behind the scenes, moderators, lottie dottie, everybody, first time, long time, agree, disagree, whatever the case might be. We are excited to have our hashtag Real Talk live session in the evening. We do these Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays. And we're actually in the midst of putting a playlist together just for the hashtag Real Talk stuff. So prayerfully, we'll be able to get that together for you all as well. And thank you again, anybody who is joining us or who's with us. If once again, just a reminder, if you haven't done so already, you can please fill out the form for us again that we've been putting out and had out on social media platforms for a little while, so that we can make sure that everybody's information is up to date. We thank you for that. And yeah. Thank you so much. So let's go ahead and get ready. If you can, if you're able, if you can rise to your feet in reverence of Yahweh's word, even if you're not, excuse me, able to rise, however you're able to reverence the word, we thank you for doing so. We appreciate you. And hopefully everybody's staying warm. If once again, if you are in need of something, to make sure that you're staying warm, or in need of us, even if we can't get something directly to you, making sure we do the best we can to direct you to, or have somebody be directed to you to help you out. We are waiting by and to help as best as we can with whatever specifics we're given. That being said, let's say shalom to everybody and get started. How you doing, Brother TJ? How you doing, Brother Dwayne, Sister Dawn, Sister Beck, Chantel, Cole, Rodney, Darius? Thank y'all for the love, by the way. Appreciate you in advance for giving the love, and thank you so much for doing so. How you doing, Double OG, Triple OG, Sister Sherry? If family's listening with Sister Sherry, how you doing? Gracias por tu presencia. Siempre. How you doing? Big brother Thomas. Right? Much love to each and every one of you. Let's go ahead and get started. If you would like to go ahead and put your Bible or your device or your right hand in the air, you can just repeat after me. This is my Bible. This is my sword. In this will I trust. For Yahshua is Lord. No sword of God shall ever be heard. For this is my Bible, and this is Yah's word. Hashem Yechavach. Aman. When you have Hashem, his name is authority. Let it be done to us. You may be seated to go back to what you were doing in the presence of the Most High. Yechava Elohim. Tonight's topic, we are going to talk specifically about the ending of the movie Zootopia 2. So I always forget, what is it? It's not trigger warning, but whatever warning. Just be known that there will be, we will be giving out stuff and talking about the movie. If you plan on seeing it, or if you don't like somebody talking about the movie in advance, just know we will be talking about it. So I had given a hint to that at the live session earlier this rising, but just in case you didn't hear it, and just in case you want to see it for yourself or whatever, feel free to go ahead and skip tonight and watch it another date, or feel free to, I don't know if you can fast forward the whole time we're gonna be talking about it. So feel free to skip tonight, or if you like to watch it, on your own, just know that I am going to be talking about the movie. All right. I forget what they call that when you, what is it? Oh, spoiler. That's what it is. Spoiler alerts. There we go. So if you don't want the movie to be spoiled for you, I will be talking about the movie. And for those that is a big deal for you, and you don't want anything to be spoiled or whatever, you want to be surprised, so be it. Feel free to go ahead and skip if you need to. How you doing, Brother Rodney? If I didn't say so already. So tonight we're going to focus on the ending of Zootopia 2. Zootopia 2. So, spoiler alert, we're talking about a specific movie. It's still out in theaters. Persons were still grabbing tickets. I had to literally, my son really, really wanted to see it. We had seen the first one. The first one was very well done. The second one, I think, was just as well done, even though it was done in a different way. But I do know that persons are still out trying to see it, and I almost couldn't get tickets for when we went to see it. So if you're somebody just gonna go see it, once again, spoiler alert. All right. Hey, how you doing, Hidden? Okay, so now that we got that, how you doing, Sister Deborah? We got that out the way. Let's go ahead and get into it. So the movie, as we talked about earlier today, some of you already caught us talking about this. The ending of the movie is kind of your typical ending as far as happy ending, right? And most movies kind of go happy ending. Everything's taken care of. We don't have to worry about anything. That's a very, I would say, Western. I think it's, pretty much done like that in England places. There are some places where the French, and I think even the Spanish and Portuguese and other places. So I can't say this is a strictly European thing, but for the most part, human beings are wired to have a happy ending. How you doing, Sister Taylor? No matter what. And this is, in fact, a happy ending. Problem with a lot of happy endings is they're not actually reasonable, right? As far as the way that they're presented. How you doing, Sister Carla? What do I mean by that? When we say that these happy endings really are not reasonable, if we keep it a buck, these happy endings basically are, how do we put this? Usually these movies that we see in the West, especially in the United States of America, the way that the movie ends is usually going to be like, hey, forget the fact that a whole bunch of stuff has happened, forget that things are all over the place, just be happy, right? For example, I don't know how many have seen these. I'm just going to put out, I don't watch as many movies. I used to be nothing but a movie buff and just watch movie after movie after movie. So I'm kind of behind on things nowadays. That being said, I don't know how many of you saw the Count of Monte Cristo movie with Jim Caviezel, the one who played Christ in the Passion of the Christ. He was in the Count of Monte Cristo with Guy Pearce and others. And I think, a lot of persons haven't watched it. I think that was a really great adaptation. They changed the book a little bit, but when you watch it, you see the happy ending. If you know about the Count of Monte Cristo, especially if you read the book, it's really jacked up what happens to the son of the Count of Monte Cristo, who believes that the character Guy Pearce plays is really jacked up, and but he, in the movie, it's just like, oh yeah, my father who raised me my whole life actually isn't my father, and my actual father offed my father who wasn't really my father. But hey, at the end we just hug, mom's there, everybody's at the Count of Monte Cristo, everything's forgiven, happy ending, right? Of course, there's a lot of stuff that has to take place. There's a lot of things that have to be changed. There's a lot of stuff that happens in somebody's life, right? Or you see, what is it, the Star Wars, whatever you would call it now, the newest trilogy, and Rey goes through all the stuff. She's gone through a lot of stuff in her life, all these different things, and you would think, there's a lot of things that are happening. She's had to basically off her grandfather, right? Find out who he is. But at the end, it's just, oh, I call myself Rey Star Walker or whatever, right? And we're just supposed to go, oh, okay, I guess everything's cool, right? We kind of have this thing where there's really crazy stuff, even in something cartoon like from back in the day, The Lion King, which is based off of a lot of it's based off of Hamlet, right? If you have read Hamlet, Hamlet has a lot of mental issues. To be or not to be, that is the question, whether it's noble in the mind, et cetera, right? Slings and arrows, all that. He's going through some things, right? When he's when he's as many persons depicted, he's looking at the skull and he's speaking to it, is what has become a tradition to speak in that in, or speak that, that particular line or set of lines out of that so-called Shakespearean book. There's a Shakespearean play. There's a lot of stuff that would be going through that person's mind, but we hope even when persons remake those things that they give us something that just gives us happy endings. How you doing, Brother Lamont? Right? Oh, listen, hey, watching football. Yeah, yeah, I hope you hope all is well enjoyed. So when we speak on these things, right? All these different things, or Blade trilogy. Okay, yeah. So even that Blade trilogy, or whatever, like anything, any movie you can think of, we're very much so. Even by the way, the Blade trilogy, the third movie, the ending was so confusing that I'm be honest, persons have told me what the ending is supposed to be about, and I'm still like, kind of confused. But for the most part, oh no, you're fine. How you doing, King say? But for the most part, right, we're giving these things. How you doing, Sister Danielle? Where we're supposed to have like, oh, everything's great, happy ending. Everybody gets along. We have no problems anymore. We have no issues, right? Everybody just gets along, right? When the reality is, a lot of these things, especially if you're talking about a lot of fantasy, there's so much stuff going on. You got to talk, there's a lot of stuff that happens after the fact. Even Lord of the Rings movie, I'll give them more credit than most in the third movie out of the original trilogy before they tried to make the Hobbit into a trilogy. The original trilogy as far as movies that came out. Well, now I won't even say original. The ones that started in the late '90s and went through the 2000s or whatever. At least at the end, although persons might say that ending was way too long, they at least are trying to let you know, hey, you've been on this really long journey with us. And these movies were really, really long. This has become like a huge thing in pop culture. We want to make sure that you actually are aware that persons have issues. So we're going to tell you Sam and right, wrap up Sam's thing, and Sam actually being the hero is the one that goes on. We're going to show you that Frodo still is dealing with some stuff from dealing with all that and carrying the ring for that, and that he has to be removed. We're going to show you, all these different things that are going on. We're going to make sure, we're going to try our best to at least show you that something happens after the fact. Right. But a lot of movies aren't like that. All that being said, Zootopia 2 follows along that same line. Right. Right. Zootopia 2 follows along that same line. Right. And so, the first one, 2001. Okay, excuse me. So whenever the first one came out through the 2000s, right? Lord Rings, right? So when you're dealing with Zootopia 2 goes through this very interesting thing where they talk about very serious issue, and it's very well done the way they do it. They reintroduce, if you don't notice the persons, the bunny, the fox, they, Judy Hopps and Nick Wilde or something are their names. They go through the process of making sure that you see the police and everything and how they're moving. They kind of reintroduce some of the side characters. They make sure that you kind of are aware that things are supposed to be better now, and that everybody's gotten back to what they do as far as everybody getting along as far as mammals, right? And then they go to a place of introducing that there is are these reptiles, right, that are not allowed to live there, right? The reptiles kind of sort of representing like POC. Maybe you can think of Native Americans, you can think of the Negro, you think of so-called Black persons, right? But how they have literally been, they haven't lived there, and persons don't really want them to live there, right? So you go through this long process through the movie, and you start finding out, that the reptiles, the issue with them is that there's this lynx family, right? That's actually supposed to be lynx, lynx animals. Once again, I know this is, fantastical. These are animals not speaking. So obviously somebody might say, why are you putting so much into it? But it's the thought process behind it, right? So you have this lynx family. The lynx family is over all of Zootopia. Apparently they created Zootopia, and in order to create Zootopia, they had to create this machine, the grandfather of one of the sons, who's prominent in the movie, had to create. He was passed away by this point. Had to create a machine, and he patented it. And this machine allows for different weather to be there for different animals, since different animals cannot exist outside of the different types of weather, right? And basically, through the movie, there's a snake, a reptile, that all of a sudden shows up, and he's trying to when you first hear him speak, he keeps talking about he needs to steal this manual, or steal, basically the stuff that has the patent in it. And he's trying to redo and rewrite wrongs, and make sure his family can actually come back home. And we start going through this process where we start to realize the links represent kind of the 1% of the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. And what's happened is that they've stolen the patent of a reptile. They've stolen the patent of a female snake who was basically arrested, in her whole neighborhood and everybody who lived in it, all the reptiles. They had their part of Zootopia, their city, was destroyed. It was buried, right? Just like you have a lot of different places that are buried at the lakes, and all types like that, or areas that we know were once, places where Black residence was powerful and a lot, as far and the population was a lot, and now they don't exist anymore, right? And so you're going through this thing, and at the end, long story short, they're able to find out, or they're able to basically prove that the snake woman actually had the patent. The Lynx family goes to jail. There's a lot of celebration. And then you kind of get the credits at the end, which happens with a lot of these movies nowadays, and especially cartoons. And you get to see everybody dance, and everything's cool. Right. And that's kind of the ending of Zootopia too. And as I said earlier, I took my son to see it. We watched it, and as usual, I try to make sure I talk to him about things that I try to talk to him about things to make sure that you recognize kind of some of the stuff at the end of this, right? That even though it is a cartoon, there's some things that they're trying to put in your head, and I want you to recognize what's going on. And I'm sorry, is it the message, the message of Zaya? Is it, or Zaya? Not sure, but thank you for being on with us. So I made sure that I talked with him about the same thing that I mentioned earlier today, and what we want to focus on a little bit tonight before we get ready for the meeting. And I told him, hey, son, all this stuff is coming out, all this stuff is there at the end of the movie, but I want you to pay attention to something at the end that unfortunately they do over and over and over again with a lot of this stuff. They have presented a problem, right? They went through whatever the work is to try and solve the crime. You went through the movie, you went through these ups and downs and these emotions, and you even are taught a lot of times in these movies to hate certain characters, so you don't mind seeing them die or something bad happening to them at the end. We talked about that before, to where persons are, we really watch these movies and we can't wait, even though we want to. Now, for some reason, we've been taught we need to identify with the villain. At the same time, we also want something to be so bad that we know they have to pay the penalty. Even in a movie like Training Day, Denzel Washington's character, they actually wanted to keep him alive at the end. And he made a point to say no, like, he's so evil, he must die. It's even famously written on the script when Terry Crews, who I think that was his first movie he was ever in, he went over to look at Denzel Washington's paper, and it said the wages of sin is death. In other words, in Denzel's mind, you can't bring this character back. He's done so much evil and stuff. He deserves death, right? Yeah, like Dune. I can't talk to especially the modern Dune. I haven't seen the modern Dune. I saw old school Dune, right? Old school Dune with like Sting in it and stuff like that, right? It's been a long time since I've seen it. Read the book. I'll be honest, I don't really remember the book that well, but read the book. Saw the old school movie, but so I can't speak to that one. But yeah, if that happens, maybe similar. I'm not sure. That being said, I made sure that my son was aware that even though they put all this stuff there, the thing I want him to walk away from is to know that if the reptile, right, if the reptiles finally are allowed back, and through the whole movie, you see that persons hate reptiles, you see that reptiles are hiding their existence, you see that they're in the place where the podunk persons are, and the podunk persons are supposed to be over them, and the reptiles are supposed to pretend they don't exist. They're like living in this boat that looks like it's sunk, but they actually are existing in the sunken ship and things of that nature. With all these things going on, right, I want you to see that if this is how they felt about them and this is how they treated them, and they were told that they were nothing, and persons were chasing this snake simply because he was literally saying, hey, I need to go ahead and reverse my family's fortune. How you doing, Joy Boy? I need to ensure that like things are set right, and everybody hated him so much that they couldn't see it. Some of the cops finally began to see it towards the end, right? But couldn't see it, and even the bad son, who was a lynx, who's one of the lynx who were supposed to be over everything at the end, he makes it a point to say nobody will believe you. You're just whatever, you guys are poor, we're rich, we make the rules. And they end up putting the family in prison and all that. You see the family in prison during the whole end scene and the music playing. How you doing, Sister Judith? All these things going on. How you doing, Sister Allison? All those things happening, right? And we forget, if we're not careful, especially the way it's presented to the children, because it's a children's movie. But the way it's presented is, oh, cool, the bad guy went to prison. Oh, cool. Everything, the bad guy went to prison. They proved that the snakes were there, and everybody just automatically started dancing and getting along. And the reality is that I wanted to know, son, they hated the serpents, right? Son, they were prejudiced towards serpents, or sorry, reptiles. Just because you were a reptile, it meant they were supposed to hate you, right? Just because you had scales, you were supposed to be scary, right? Just because somebody they had used against them, they had lied and said that, that the reptiles were trying to steal the patent that was actually stolen from them. And so for generations now, this has been taught. How you doing, Sister Deborah? Deborah, right? And so, and all the things that are going on, I was like, son, I want you to know that even though everybody's dancing around, there's actually work that would need to be done, because now we would have to get to a point of ensuring that persons are retaught, taught the truth, right? It was hidden, the truth was hidden. And now just because it's reintroduced doesn't mean that everybody's going to sing and dance. So while I still want you to enjoy the movie, I want you to have in the back of your mind something that a lot of children and a lot of adults are not going to walk away with, which is this didn't correct. It corrected as far as the truth is out there, but there's a lot of persons that probably wouldn't even believe the truth. There's a lot of persons that wouldn't feel comfortable to be around reptiles if you've been teaching everybody for years that they're evil because they're reptiles, right? They're evil because they have scales, right? They're evil because of these things, right? This is what the movie has presented. So I want you to know that, because in real life, son, we're still dealing with stuff to where it doesn't matter. Like there's some persons who it doesn't matter what we say. It doesn't matter what we do. It doesn't matter like how we help and how we operate and how we do things. Some persons still have it in their mind and will not do the work to make things better, right? Some persons still will not do the work, right? Right? There's some persons who will not do the work, like there's persons, who like say all types of weird stuff, and you can tell they're not doing things, or if it, like you can't get them, no matter how much truth you give unto them, they're not going to change, they're not going to move, right? They're not going to hear anything. Like, and so if you have this situation going on, I want you to know there's more, because we live in a society today where there's more work to be done. How you doing, G? Right? There's way more work to be done, right? There's way more stuff. We can't just operate and say, hey, there's a lot of truth coming out on TikTok. There's a lot of truth coming out on YouTube. There's a lot of persons teaching and preaching, because just because the truth is given there, there's actually work. And just because we have faith in something, without the works, we cannot go about. And a lot of movies, such as Zootopia 2 or other movies, will give you all these things, but not talk about all the stuff that will have to happen after the fact to make it work, right? Or maybe they'll even leave and they'll tell you there's work, but they're not going to. And by the way, that wouldn't sell, right? A lot of persons don't want to see a movie about actually putting work in, you know. What's his face at what's that movie? Bradley Cooper. I always forget the name of it, where he takes the pill and the pill's almost off him and stuff, but he's able to get control of it at the end and redo it and wean his way off of it and still get his brain to operate correct. Whatever that movie's called, right? At the end of it, it's just, oh yeah, I'm weaned off of it. I'm smart. I go ahead and say this one thing. I want to become president, limitless. Thank you. I'm gonna become president of the United States, and then I'll become leader of the free world, and I'm smart enough where everything's going to change. I mean, I guess, right? But one person doing this and stuff like that, how does that operate, right? So I wanted him to know this because we are in a situation today where that's where you get a lot of persons. It's kind of that's the same mindset of, man, you know what? Just work hard and everything will change, right? Just get the grades. Like we were talking about today with our standardization part one in the series that we're doing. Within the series we're doing, if you just get the grade, or if you just go to the school, or if you just go to the class, or if you just put in, right, then it's going to change automatic, right? Right. So like this whole thing of it's just going to change no matter what. This whole thing of like you can do things for you. Watch this. We have persons in our community that we do things for all the time, right? I've had and they'll pretend that you've done nothing, right? Or they'll say that because you didn't do it in the manner they wanted you to do it, it doesn't count, or they'll erase what you've done, right? There are persons who within our own society, we have the bourgeoisie who literally are persons who take who taking a position against themselves is what gets them, at least what in their mind is ahead, right? We have persons who are not confidants and they're really comrades, and once they are done, or constituents, and once they figure they can get somewhere else, right? There's a lot of different things that take place. We have yes, we can talk about racism, white supremacy. We can talk about just evil. We can talk about sin. We can talk about persons who take the word and try to maneuver it into what it is that they want it to be. We have persons who make it a point to say that they want to be a part of something, and then say, okay, I'm going to be a part of that, to take something and try to make something new. Whatever the case is, there's a lot of issues that happen, and if we don't make sure that we have a specific way and an agreed upon way of ensuring that we get out of something, we're still just going to continue to do the same thing and fight against each other no matter what. And so I was trying to tell my son that at the end of the day, even though this was a really nice movie and it was great and it's a great story and it outlines a lot of things, I want you to realize that at the end of the movie, it's not as simple as, okay, now they told the truth, everybody sing and dance. Because I even told them at the end, all these animals dancing together, they hated the reptiles. You think they're just going to dance next to reptiles who they've been told to trash their whole life, right? Right? You think they're going to dance just to animals, right? That are that they've been told to hate their whole life, right? Do you think that Brown versus Board Education was going to happen, and they weren't going to have to use the National Guard to get those babies in school? You think that chattel slavery was going to be over, and they weren't going to use Reconstruction as a tool to make sure that they can go ahead and continue chattel slavery on the low, or high key, not even low key, right? How you doing, brother Richard? Right? Like we, if we look at this properly, we have to recognize that just because there's some of the smartest persons in the world are some of the persons that we can't trust the most. I've learned that having more intelligence doesn't mean that I don't need to be better, right? Paul had all the intelligence. When Paul was Saul, he was already pretty much like kind of a superstar, intellectually, superstar. Intellectually speaking, he was known, right, around the world. And yet, he said, when I learned about who Christ was, it was as dumb. He still had work to do, right? Um, when the son of Judah, I'm talking about Judah. I'm sorry, not the son of Judah, the son of Matthias, or Matthew, right? Matthias. When Matthew, son Judah, we talk in Maccabees, when Judah finally takes over, they still had to do things to rebuild the temple. Hence the Feast of Dedication, to make it worthy of being dedicated to the Most High again. There's still work. Just because you beat the Greeks, right, doesn't mean that you still don't have to rebuild the temple, right? Yeah, right. To you see, so just because you've right, once again, just because you won a fight, and many fights, matter of fact, you won the war, right, doesn't mean there wasn't work to be done. And we let our guard down because we were so busy thinking, okay, we won, we can let our guard down. Here we are making a treaty with Rome, which backfires because now Rome takes over the Greeks, but then says to the Greeks, "We'll put you back over the Israelites," even though the Israelites said that they're going to sign a treaty with the Romans, rather than saying, "Hey, we have work to do within ourselves," and even rededicated the temple doesn't mean that we've rededicated ourselves, right? if we're not careful, right? If we're not careful, right? We must recognize, what's going on. Matter of fact, even a lot of these things that were being reestablished and stuff like that, you still have to make sure that you have proper vehicles. Even when we're talking about things such as your EIN and making sure that things are proper and things of that nature, let's not get to the place to where we do the same thing the world does with it, right? What is it? Uh, is it? I always forget the acronym for this. Give me a second, y'all. Um, I might have it in a screenshot somewhere. I thought I took a screenshot of it. If it's not, I got the video somewhere. I'll talk about it another day. This is standard something vehicle. What is that? Let me see if I can look it up. Standard vehicle. Um, what are those things called? Well, the one I'm looking for in particular, there's vehicles. If you don't know, long story short, there's different vehicles, or at least they're called vehicles, to where if you're going to put things together, a lot of persons say, I'm going to put a trust together and put, you know, I don't necessarily do it, but I get persons, if they think that they need to use it or whatever, they try to use LLCs and different things like that, but trust and all these things. But you have to make sure that these things are proper vehicles. If they're not proper vehicles, you can call yourself a CEO of whatever, but these vehicles might put you right back into the same place that you used to be in, right? So just because you say I'm going to do what everybody else does doesn't mean that that's actually where you're trying to hit. If you're going to get an EIN, a lot of persons say we want to do this, want to do that. Well, some of the stuff you're talking about might not be for profit. You might want to make it nonprofit and make sure that nonprofit is not just the only thing you take. You might want to figure out under nonprofit, there's other things that you can become as well to ensure that it's very specific, right? So that then you can actually use the vehicles properly to drive, if you will, right? To send or make the money travel, or to drive it the way that you want it to go. But these are things that you have to do, right? But just because we get to the place where everybody goes up, see, we finally are doing this. We finally can now we know we can go to the IRS or go to this place or go to that place, and we can just sign this paperwork. This is why I tell persons all the time, sovereignty is not as simple as paperwork. How you doing, Sister Monique? How you doing, Sister Tia? How you doing, Minister Akita? Right? Sovereignty is not as simple as just, get your paperwork done. Sovereignty is not as simple as, yeah, just go ahead and get your DS11. I'm about to say DD214, DS11 done, and then that's it. No, there's still stuff to be done. I know somebody taught us get that, and that's happy ending, or there's persons who will say like, oh yeah, authenticate your birth certificate. Why would you want your birth certificate, which is something that works against you, to be authentic? And when it gets authenticated, you still haven't seen not one person be able to provide you any information or any proof that authenticating the birth certificate means that the government will pay you the money. Right. So somebody will say your birth certificate is worth 6 million, 10 million, 20 million, whatever per person. But then they tell you to go through all this stuff, and you haven't seen anything that tells you that that's the way to go, right? So why would you authenticate it, especially if you could just be private? And by being private in your dealings, even if you don't get the paperwork done, I would suggest some of it you get done. But even if you do not get the paperwork done, if you think privately in everything, right? If you make sure that the land that you're on, you start looking at that being even if it's just a micronation. I don't want to speak poorly of micronations just, but even if it's a micronation, you make sure that you do certain things. But we'll get to a place to where, oh yeah, happy ending. That's all that there is. No, just because it's the end of the story or the end of the movie or this part of the play, it doesn't mean that there's still not work to be done. Right? It doesn't mean that there's still not work to be done. How you doing, Brother Alex? Right. So in all these things that are happening, like, yeah, if everybody were to come and do exactly everything that you say and that they want to be done, all right, cool. As soon as that's done, what's the next step? This is where our vision is important. And this is why, like we talk about in eternity, we know what's supposed to happen. In the timeline, we're preparing ourselves for eternity. And like we say, things in time, right, are telling us where we are on the road, on the eternal road, if you will. Eternity being the highway. And let's say every sign you pass is, in fact, a place that you should know where you are on your road to it, right? If you see a sign that says 150 miles towards Atlanta, then you still got 150 miles to go. You'll see another one that says 125, 175, etc. Right? These are the things that we need to know. And so at the end of Zootopia 2, As soon as I saw it, it really was something that hit me. Holy Spirit was like, hey, make sure you talk to Solomon. And then then later on, make sure you talk to SOC about the fact that when we see these things, let's not get in the habit of being like, oh, happy. And we've been taught so much that like, yeah, once I get the job, that's it. No, it's not. Because the job, even if it's there, it's a placeholder to where you're supposed to be really doing your work. So even if the job helps you, even if you need the job for 10 years, where is the plan so that at the end of the 10 years, you can start working towards what your work is, right? That you can start working towards where your work is. You know, even if you get $1 million today, what are you going to do with the $1 million as far as investing? What are you going to do as far as whom you're going to give it to? Whoever it is, doesn't have to be SOC. Who you're going to give? You know, if we're talking about the lineage of Melchizedek and all this, right? Who are you going to make sure that first things first, you give a tribute, even if it's not SOC, even if you're not SOC, right? Like that's from the beginning, right? And if you are of a sham that does say Asher, or you are of a sham that is, for example, oh man, I'm having a moment here. Okay, I'll just choose another one, or of Simeon or somebody like that, right? In what you do, you know, just because you even have a name, right? This is part of the thing too. I guess I didn't say this properly enough, but just because you have a name, right? That in that name, that authority, it doesn't mean that that means you do nothing else, right? Judah is a lineage of kings. Not everybody in Judah is a king. Judah is a lineage of praise worshipers. It doesn't mean they didn't know how to farm, right? Right? Judah, Benjamin, frontliners. It doesn't mean that Benjamin didn't help to make sure that they secured certain aspects around the throne, not only fighting all the time, right? There's a nation that has to go. So even when we're learning who we are, right, the goal is not to just be like, oh, okay, I got this. So the goal is not even, even for us, the goal is not, okay, we're doing better on live sessions, okay, we do Zoom sessions, okay, persons meet up, all right, people travel and see each other. But then no, like now there's a goal behind that. What is the business? That's right, come on, a kingdom, a country, a nation, right, an order, a structure, even some agreement. So what is it? This is why we say when we do these meetings, we had a project management meeting, when we talk to each other, when we call each other, when we say, please support, we're saying, support each other in the same manner that you would the world. We can be mad about it, but the world at least has a mindset. This is why Yahashua says, if you'll give to somebody, only because they'll give back to you. If you'll support somebody, only because they'll make sure they do blah, blah. Now, we should support one another, right? But just hear what I'm saying. If the only reason you give to somebody is because of what they'll give you, right? Then what thanks have we? Because your enemy does the same thing, right? Right? If you're going to do what the world does, and that's going to be an indication to you, then just you should be of the world. But we're trying to build something greater. Matter of fact, we're trying to build upon something greater. For the kingdom exists, right? Now it's time to manifest. Right now it's time to manifest. Right? It's time to manifest. Right? And by the way, if what you're doing is not manifesting, maybe we should ask questions as far as why it's not, right? It might be because we're not doing what we're supposed to do. It might be because I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do. It might be because you are not doing what you're supposed to do. But let's look at this thing properly, because at this point, once again, see, we're seeing all this stuff. We keep saying the world's getting crazy. The world is world, and the world is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. The world is on point. The world is being satanic. The world follows their father, right? They are children of their father, the Satan, and they follow quite well. That's not even a question if they follow their father. But when we look at us, how is it that we have how is it that we have the keys to the kingdom? How is it that we know the end, and yet somehow, some way, we're still trying to figure out how to start? Right? We have faith but no works. We know where we're supposed to go, but we haven't gotten in the car yet. Right? We gotten in the car, but we forgot. We keep forgetting to put gas in and trying to figure out why we can't move ahead. I'm not saying that there's not anything stopping us. right? Or trying to stop us. That being said, if Yah before us, right? Right? If Yah before us, is more than the whole world against us, right? If Yah before us. So is Yah for us? Has Yah told us, don't be like the world and just say, hey, I've been saved, and not work out your own salvation with fear and trembling? Then we have the word. We know not to just count on being saved. If we're only counting on being saved, and that's it. If we're not worried about being cleansed, as we talked about in one of these live sessions earlier this week or last week, whenever it was, then not only did he save me, he cleansed me, right? Getting ourselves ready so that we might move cleanly. And it means we're going to operate different than a dirty world. So just because we got into a place to where, oh, that's great, don't dance for so long. Look, I'm not even saying do not celebrate. I think that's something we don't do enough of. Celebrate when you make a move. Celebrate when Yah is great. Celebrate when your family's moving where they're supposed to. Celebrate when something is different. Celebrate when you make these minor details. I've had to learn how to celebrate those things because I didn't used to celebrate a lot of things. And then when you don't celebrate, when you don't have a mindset to, when everything falls apart, you start falling apart because you haven't taken time out to realize, you know what? I've been on the street before, and you know what? I've gotten transitional home before, and you know what? I've been in the shelter before, and you know what? I've ate throughout it before, even if I had to scrounge it up, and I've been outside almost freezing to death, and I blah blah. And so when you go there and you learn how to go back, when you celebrated before, you don't mind going back as much because hey, you realize that hey, this victory of being able to have a right mind is better in many different ways and sweeter in many different ways than having a victory that says I got $1 billion, because there's billionaires that don't have a right mind and they throw themselves out of windows. So, I know this is just a movie and we use the movie as a backdrop to something a little more vast, right? But the end of Zootopia 2, if it taught me anything, and Holy Spirit told me like, hey, pay attention. And after all this stuff, just because they put somebody in jail doesn't mean that everything went back to zero. How you doing, Upper Echelon? Thanks for being part of the community. How you doing, Sister Toya? Right. I enjoyed the video, by the way. Once again, kind of the same thing where people be celebrating the wrong thing, though, I guess, in that instance. But keep it up, of course. Video talking about how persons were saddened about what they were doing to puppies coming up being taken out the womb, but they don't mind that to happening to babies. Right. You were just sharing with your sons that you would go see. Yeah, my son. That's what I was saying. My son. It's a great movie. Especially if you've seen. I know it was a long time ago. Have you seen the first one? I didn't think it was going to be that great. It turned out to be really well done. I'm just talking about the end of it and stuff like that. As far as let's hold on to the fact that hey, just because they're saying everything's cool, we need to know that there's still more work to be done. There's still PTSS. There's still persons we need to read up on. Cloud Anderson. Dr. Amos Wilson. Dr. Amos Wilson is one of the most slept on cats, especially financially for our people and what we should be looking at. One of those slept on cats of all time, right? If you read just a couple things of him or even look for some of his speeches, and I'll be honest, he can be even more long-winded than I know I can be long-winded and boring too, but check him out. Check him out, right? He's somebody that, will really badaki, right? Will really bless you, if you will. But that being said, we do have to get ready for this meeting tonight. So I thank you all. If I don't see you on the project management meeting tonight, we're just going to be focused on, we're going to hit a couple things for like 2 minutes. We're going to allow Sister Angela to do her thing. She's giving us some things we can look at while she's talking. And we're going to try to start being better at promoting and helping out some of our brothers and sisters around the world. We're not going to, of course, do it at the expense of making sure we take care of home first, but we do want to be as much of a blessing as we can to help things be set up and to help things, what we can, such as we give unto thee, right? That's part of the word. So we follow that word. So thank you all. Tadah, Mashapachim. Appreciate you. Shan Shalom once again, if you're going by the Hebrew calendar, if you're going by everyday, weekly Gregorian calendar, early Shabbat Shalom to if I don't see you sometime tomorrow. Tomorrow we will in the rising start where we left off. It will get deeper into our standardization stuff. I got the notes and everything ready to go. So we'll kind of start where we left off, talking about eugenics and talking about what happened in 1905 and Darwinism and Linnaean stuff. But then we'll actually increase and we'll start to get into how this stuff affects us in many different places, whether we're talking about healthcare, banking, real estate, policing, all these different things, which by the way, we need to take notes of these things too, because the way that they're acting, we do not want to act, because when we have our own, guess what we still have to do? We have to police. We still have to administer what we might call medicine, whether it be natural medicine. We still have to make sure that we take care of our women. We still have to make sure we protect each other. We still have to take care of our children. We still have to educate, and we have to do so in a manner that we ourselves don't end up turning into the very things that we say we hate. Once again, we can't talk bad about others if we end up doing the same thing our enemy does and being on the same level, right? So let's be ready for that. I thank you. I appreciate you. Tonight was not a woohoo message, I guess, but hopefully it made sense and it hits you where you are. That being said, if you still go see the movie, enjoy. Right? Just wanted to tell you about something that I saw at the end that Holy Spirit asked me to share when I was talking to Solomon. So love you all. Appreciate you. We look forward to talking to you soon. We got a meeting in about 10 minutes, about 11 minutes or so. So prayerfully, we'll see you on Zoom. Look for the Google Calendar invite. And thank you all for being on. As always, we give our honor and praise to the Most High. We give our praise and honor for my wife, the Honorable Maya, for the ministerial staff, moderators, everybody. Thank you so much. And remember, as always, that you are loved, you're necessary, you're majestic, you're fearfully and wonderfully made. And you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in this system no longer have to be of it. All right. Shalom, family. Take care. Talk to you soon. Peace.